Hello, everyone. Nick here. Thank you very much for tuning in to my book review channel. We have been reviewing the Deadtime storybooks. We are on to book 8, Grave Secrets. Starting with the cover, we have this porcelain baby doll emerging from the ground very spookily. It's got a crack in her head, and there's some like orange energy coming out as well. Have some green fog in the background. A lightning storm. I like that the lightning storm is sort of touching down on the ground. That really adds to the effect. The tombstone is a little generic, though. It's just an RIP tombstone. Wish it was a bit more detailed, but you know, effective cover. It's simple yet effective, and it's also done by Brooke Stedman, that has done many of the Dead Time Story covers. Really like the Dead Time Story font here and the colors they use with this one. Purple and the green. Very, very nice combo. And they do pretty good. Pretty good with the introductory colors for these books. I think they're very eye catching. And they were very, eye catching to me as a child, which is why I think they've stayed with me for so long and why I've always been very interested in this series. Going into the actual book, it's a pretty solid one. It's very sad, and it takes a bit of a different tone than a lot of them, I think, in terms of, its tragedy. It's also different in terms of the characters we have in the book. It's been two characters usually experiencing the horrors or the supernatural aspects of the book so far, but now we have four children sort of experiencing it, though not all at one time. The main character, Amanda, sort of playing ball with her friends in her yard. Her friends are Laura, we have Kevin and Jared, and the ball unfortunately goes into the neighbor's yard. And of course, the neighbor is the creepy old lady, Mrs. Barnes, that lives next door. And she has a reputation, supposedly, of taking children, locking them away in her dungeon. She also bites the heads off of bats. So, very pleasant, very fun. This is a trope that I've encountered before in media and stories. I think it's like a folklore legend that has, developed over time and has changed over time through culture. The creepy old lady next door and the children, losing their ball over in her yard. And, I mean, they make it work in this story pretty well, I think. It's more, I guess it's more simple in terms of setting and concept as opposed to the other ones that have felt very actiony, and we have a bunch of different settings and different creatures, being introduced. So I think it's nice to have, a bit of this more simplicity, and I think it definitely makes it work in this case of this story. So the ball, of course, gets stuck in her yard. Amanda is the one to go and retrieve it. And as she's almost out of the yard, she actually gets grabbed by Mrs. Barnes. In this story, they call her Barnesy as her nickname. And Barnesy's like, I got you. What are you doing in my yard? Kind of thing. And of course, Barnesy is, she's a lonely older lady, doesn't have any friends or family. Really sad, of course, how she's portrayed. And of course, these kids are just horrified of her and have these opinions. But it is the case for these types of books and from the child's perspective. So she's able to get away besides her friendship bracelet, which Barnesy has now. And a moment later, they run into a dead squirrel. And this is where the story really picks up. And of course, they think, oh, did Barnsey, did she put a dead squirrel over here, kind of thing. So they've set her up to be, the big scary protagonist here in the book. So there is a like a little place in Amanda's yard where they dig up in the woods to bury the squirrel, give it a proper burial. And of course, as they're digging, they encounter something. They hear "mama," the words "mama," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, here we go." They dig a little further and they find the doll of the book, the porcelain baby doll. Of course, it's all caked in mud, and there's mud covering its eye. It only has one eye open. It's in rough shape, of course, from being under the ground. And so they dig it out, and um, they're like, "Whoa, this doesn't have a voice box. How did it say that? How did it say mama?" So of course they're naturally freaked out by it, and so Amanda takes it home, puts it on her porch, and strange things begin happening as you would expect. She gets the first time the steam in her bathroom on her mirror spells out, "I want my baby back." And you're like, "Uh-oh, the ghost is here." And that happens, of course, throughout the book where they get these messages saying, "I want my baby back." There's a nice dream sequence that happens that I like quite a bit with Amanda, where she dreams that she is a little bit younger. She's 11 in the story, but she's a little bit younger. And it's, you know, I would guess 1920s, 1930s at this point. And she has the baby doll, and there's a girl that actually steals it from her. And we find out that girl's name is Emily. She's like, "Emily, give me my doll back. That's my doll." So Emily's taking her doll, and this little girl that Amanda is portraying is running after her. And unfortunately, the little girl that's chasing Emily dies and gets hit by a car very tragically. So that is a pretty dark turn. And most of these books were they are darker than Goosebump books, I think. This one really does take one of the darker turns and one of the darker ones so far in the series for that. And so she wakes up, and of course she's horrified by that. Back in her bed. At some point she's on her bike driving, and it sort of drives on its own and takes her to a specific spot, and we meet the ghost girl, and she's saying, "I want my baby back, my baby back." And then Mrs. Barnes is there, and she's giving her the evil eye, and Mrs. Barnes almost hits her too, where the bike gets controlled, and you kind of piece together maybe who Emily is um, at this point. And at some point, Mrs. No, Casey, the sister of Amanda, they're like, "What happened to the doll?" Because the doll goes missing. And she was like, "Oh, the little girl took it." You're like, "What little girl?" So, of course, the younger sister can see her. And she plays with Casey a couple times, and she's like, "I wish they would just they would give me my doll back. This ghost girl, this poor ghost girl." So we finally come to understand that Barnesy, Mrs. Barnes, was that little girl Emily, and the little girl that's the ghost, her name is Anna, and Anna has been trying to sort of contact Emily, Mrs. Barnes, but Mrs. Barnes, I guess from where she's older now, she doesn't believe in the ghost, and she doesn't see Anna, and so that's why she's asked for the help of Amanda to help that happen. And at the end of the story, they finally go, and Amanda's like, Mrs. Barnes, Anna, she's she wants her doll back, and she's been haunting me. And Mrs. Barnes, of course, does remember this from her childhood very much, and has regretted it since it happened when they were little girls. And she's like, What do you know about that? How do you know that?" And it gets really sad too because finally she does see Anna again, and she's crying, and Mrs. Barnes digs up the doll, and her and Amanda sort of embrace by this. And it's really sad, but really touching, and very different than a lot of the content that happens in these books. And I want to go back to the characters for a moment. I really like the chemistry of Kevin and Jared, particularly. Kevin sort of is not the brightest, it seems like, in this book, and he's very much the one trolling about the legend of Mrs. Barnes, and her evil doings supposedly. And Jared is like the logical one. He's like, "That's ridiculous. That would never happen." And of course, it's funny when they actually see the ghost girl. Jared's like, just he's like, "Whoa," he's not like, "That's not impossible anymore." It kind of shuts him up, but he is a little mean to Kevin. But Kevin is very much a troll, and I quite like that that comical aspect of the book, and I think that was very effective, especially for it being a darker kind of book like this, a more heavy kind of book in terms of children's literature. So they end up becoming friends with Mrs. Barnes in the end. She really likes Kevin, buys him shoes and stuff like that, and they eat like a they have a gummy rat, and so she's like, "Oh, she actually does eat rats," and she's like, "Only the heads of the gummy rats." And she shows them her basement. It's just a regular basement, of course. There's no children there, and I think that's very nice too. I really like that they come to become friends with the lonely old lady at the end, and she's not that bad. And the other children in the neighborhood, they get to understand too that that was just you know um, uh, like mean stories that people made up about her. So quite like that. And then at the end, they're actually planting like flowers in honor of Anna, and they dig up something else, or they hit something else in the ground, and it's an old Jack in the Box. And Mrs. Barnes is like, "Ah, another relic from the past." And the book ends with that, which is kind of, I think, one of the weaker end twist endings, but nonetheless, this was very good uh, book in the series. I give it an 8, maybe an 8.5. It was simple, um, simple sort of ghost story, but I liked the characters' interaction, and I think I really liked the dream sequence as well. Give it a bit of a surreal taste, so not too bad. If you've read this book, what do you think about it? Um, and thank you very much for tuning in today. I will see you in the next one. Bye.